Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the Pink CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Bob Mackin. He's an award-winning investigative reporter and the publisher of TheBreaker.News. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Thank you.
Bob, a judge in Quebec has approved a trial going ahead against SNC Lavalin on fraud and corruption charges. Will that trial ever happen?
Well, now the judge says it will. We don't know what the dates are, but this is good news to move forward. Of course, there could be some more obstruction of justice attempts happening, but I think that would be right now political suicide for Justin Trudeau going into the election campaign. The whole SNC Lavalin scandal has caused the federal Liberal Party enough problems. They got to look at something else. And for him to wade back into that and have Dave Lametti, the Attorney General who took over from Jody Wilson-Raybould, to do that would be fraught with so many difficulties. I don't think they'd be dumb enough to try that. This is good news. The judge in Quebec basically looked at the preliminary hearing that happened last fall and looked at all the evidence that was put forward and said there is a triable issue here. Of course, the burden of proof isn't as heavy as it is during a trial. It's a criminal trial, so it's got to be beyond reasonable doubt that SNC Lavalin committed tens of millions of dollars of corruption and bribery in Libya. But this would be a case where a lot of interesting people would be potential witnesses, people that were in senior management at SNC Lavalin, people in the CEO's office, people who were vice presidents, including some vice presidents who worked out of British Columbia. It would also include people that were on the board of directors. One person is Gwen Morgan, who was on the board for a number of years. He was Christy Clark's key person on her campaign committee as well as her transition team. And he's someone who has said before that he's blamed rogue executives for this corruption. But a lot of people have said, wait a second here, you were chair of the board at the time, you were in control, you were responsible for what happened to you underneath the company. You can't just say that so easily. Well, we'll have to see what would be said in court under oath in front of a judge and possibly jury. This case could take a while to determine, but this case could have ripple effects that could actually break up SNC Lavalin because if they were found guilty of the charges against them, they wouldn't be allowed to bid for about a decade or so on federal government-funded work. This is a long time coming for this case, for SNC Lavalin to face the music here in Canada. This period of time was about a decade or so that ran until about 2011, where they're alleged to have done all sorts of corrupt acts and bribery in order to get business and keep business under the Gaddafi regime in Libya. And part of that case is bringing one of Gaddafi's sons to Canada and wining him and dining him and providing him with women for hire and touring him around the country. And that included a stop here in Vancouver. And key question is of this whole matter is this company really existed, has existed because of the shareholders, but also the public. It thrives and survives on public-funded infrastructure projects, and very big projects. They're involved right now in Site C. They're bidding for the Patala Bridge, along with Acciona is their partner in that bid. They've been involved in BC Ferries terminal management, and they've been involved in every single step of the way whenever there's been a rapid transit expansion in British Columbia, and that is where it gets interesting because of the two big projects that are foreseen in the future, the the Broadway subway, which is an expansion of the Millennium Line, and also the expansion of the SkyTrain in Surrey. Two projects where you'd have to believe that they are in the bidding. We're waiting to see the official lists of who the bidders are and then the short lists, but you'd have to believe that SNC Lavalin would be involved because they've been involved in every single step of the way. One of their signature projects for the entire company actually is the Canada Line. They built that and they financed that and they operate that on a long-term deal for TransLink. TransLink will, in a couple of decades, take it over, but SNC Lavalin, that's their baby. The Canada Line, our rapid transit expansion from downtown Vancouver to the airport. And, of course, they did most recently, before that, the Evergreen Line, which was fraught with problems with tunnel boring, problems with soil conditions. It opened 6 months late, and we still don't quite know really what the final bill was. We were told it was built on budget, but definitely wasn't built on time, and the BC government and SNC Lavalin butted heads behind the scenes on that project. So here you have SNC Lavalin finally about to face the music in Quebec, and we'll see what kind of evidence they put up in their defense. For the last couple of years, their line has been that all the rotten apples, bad apples, are gone, and they're a new company adhering to new policies and procedures, trying to be more transparent, more compliant with the law, and put to bed their horrible past. Well, we don't quite know how deep that past was until we actually see everything go down in court and see what ultimately a judge decides.
And of course, they're saying that this will play differently in Quebec than in Anglo-Canada. Is that because in Quebec they're more accepting of what you might say shady business deals?
I don't know so much about that because Quebec recently had the Charbonneau Commission where it tried to come to terms with massive corruption there in public and private construction. And, part of that Charbonneau Commission did include sections on SNC Lavalin and their political donations, how they did political donations illegally. They had their employees and their spouses make donations and then invoiced for repayment. And Quebec, of course, they're an important company economically from a head office standpoint. Every city loves to have lots of head offices and prestigious head offices. I'll give you that. But at the same time, there was this line that Trudeau and the Liberals were peddling several months ago that their only business in this is to try to save 9,000 jobs. And various experts came out after that and said, well, if this company was to break up, those jobs would really go elsewhere because there still is a demand for infrastructure projects. There still are cities and provinces and their partners that are out there in the market looking for companies to help them build highways, build bridges, build transit. And those skillful employees who are at SNC Lavalin could find themselves in another company helping another company bid as well. So with those 9,000 jobs that disappear from SNC Lavalin, if SNC Lavalin meets the fate, if the judge does find them guilty, those judges wouldn't just go poof. Those jobs wouldn't just go poof. Those jobs would find their way elsewhere. So I don't think we can just assume that Quebecers love SNC Lavalin and hold them dear like they hold the Montreal Canadiens dear. I don't think that's the case at all. I think a lot of people in Quebec would be as embarrassed as the rest of Canada would be that this company sunk to the lows it did. It'd be nice to see a company like this actually be a world leader, but they've actually been a world leader in headlines in corruption in recent years, and that's cost them some value on the stock markets this year. There was one of the mining contracts in Peru was canceled. And again, they've been doing a lot of lobbying with the BC and DP government because they really do want the Patella Bridge and hope to continue building and expanding rapid transit. Meanwhile, working on Site C. That's the other question is if the company is eventually found guilty in court and it can't bid anymore to bring in new revenue. Well, what happens to its existing contracts? That's a reasonable question, and I don't know if governments have sat down to think about that yet, about what they would do if SNC Lavalin, for example, was not able to continue on Site C. Right now, again, that's all hypothetical. There's still a long way to go. This has to go into court. They're a company that is presumed innocent going into court, but there are some serious questions that they'll be facing in court, and I look forward to listening to those answers.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, Recycling Trade Publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, what about the person who started this whole SNC Lavalin scandal? She now plans to run as an independent.
Well, she didn't start the whole scandal per se. There were people at SNC Lavalin who had their fingers in the button on that one many years ago, but Jody Wilson-Raybould was the one who really brought this to light. Of course, the big joke is that it's all Scott Bryson's fault. The liberal from the East Coast who decided to resign and leave politics suddenly in January, and of course that touched off the cabinet shuffle, and the cabinet shuffle that shuffled Jody Wilson-Raybould out of the Attorney General's ministry and into Veterans Affairs. That had people scratching their heads right off the top, wondering what could have gone on there. What's the story there? And several short weeks later, we found out that that was not a willing choice of hers, and it unraveled from there with various resignations, including the resignation of Gerald Butts, the right-hand man to Justin Trudeau, and Jody Wilson-Raybould, her famous appearance before the Justice Committee, and they wouldn't let her go in for a second time. And so she decided on her own to submit documents and recordings to that Justice Committee, including the famous taped phone call with the clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Wernick, the number one public servant in all of government, who anyone who listens to that, it's pretty plain and clear that he was doing the bidding of his political master, Justin Trudeau, trying to ask her about how she was deciding on whether to give a second chance to SNC Lavalin to look at the possibility of a deferred prosecution agreement, and she wasn't going to take it. She recorded that phone call and eventually released it. She got criticized heavily by those who were Liberal sympathizers, but was applauded by people who are First Nations like she is, and also people who care about good governance and proper spending and anti-corruption across Canada. That we learned a lot more about how the Trudeau government operates through the whole scandal, and it wasn't very pretty at all, and in fact it contravened the promises from the last election in 2015, where Justin Trudeau said that his Liberal Party would do politics differently. They were going to do things differently. They came in with big ideals, and they had a lot of promises to keep, but they're going to do things differently and change the way Canada was governed, and less confrontational, less partisan, more consensus building, and that all seemed to fall by the wayside because last year, as we found out from Jody Wilson-Raybould, people in the Prime Minister's office, people in the Finance Minister's office were really putting her under pressure because, as she was told when she sat in one of the meetings with Trudeau, that it was about a company in his riding, in his city, and a lot of jobs in his riding, and he was worried about what it might do in the next election. So here we are going towards this election with all the drama that's played out, and now we've got Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott, the other Liberal who was fired from caucus. They've decided to run as independents in the October federal election. They certainly have name recognition. Unlike most independents who run for office, these two independents were on front pages of newspapers and on top story of TV news and heard all on the radio. They're very well known coast to coast. Among the most well-known politicians of the day right now, I'd say. So that's in their favor to run as independents, but it's going to be an uphill battle because you can bet your bottom dollar that the Liberal Party will be finding candidates in both of those ridings to go aggressively at them to try to defeat them. That's going to be an interesting case to see who the party finds to fight both of them. Jane Philpott in the Ontario riding and in Vancouver Granville for Jody Wilson-Raybould. It's interesting that they decided to just go as independents, even though they made special note in their speeches at their press conferences of saying that they would they're on the same page in a lot of policies as the Green Party and Elizabeth May. They're very much buying into the climate change arguments, and but being independents by not going full on into the Green Party, staying as independents does leave a door open for even just a sliver. What happens if there's a potential future for them back in the Liberal Party? I don't think I'd put money on Justin Trudeau finding a way to reconcile differences. But what if Justin Trudeau doesn't win the election or gets in as a minority and has a slow end to his prime ministership? What does that mean for the rest of the party if there's a leadership contest, for instance? Do Jody Wilson-Raybould or Jane Philpott run, or do they support someone who would run, and would that person who wins and succeeds Trudeau when that time happens bring them back into the fold? That's a question there. Of course, as independents, they're going to face a few challenges in terms of fundraising. The other parties and their machines will well-resource the candidates who will be running against them. And they don't enjoy, as independents, the profile of being working under a party leader or part of the team and profiting from the advertising that increases the profile. But with the profile they've had over the last 6 months or so, maybe they don't need that extra push. Maybe they can do it on their own. It also runs the risk for them that some Liberals who voted for them last time may stay with the Liberals, and some Liberals and others who voted for them last time may not go and vote because they don't see anyone to vote for. They could always split the vote there, and that could allow the Conservative in a tight race, for instance, to win the riding, or possibly an NDP candidate if they can find someone who's palatable to voters, especially in Vancouver Granville. These will be definitely two other ridings that will be among the most watched on the way to October 21st.
Going back to companies trying to curry favor with the Prime Minister, did C-SPAN, Vancouver Tugboat and Shipbuilding Company, did it do any special favors to get some of those Coast Guard shipping contracts?
Well, it's very interesting that something was happening back in earlier in the spring, that C-SPAN was buying a lot of radio ads on CKNW and News 1130 to tout the National Shipbuilding Strategy Program, which they were involved with, is building a number of ships for the Navy and the Coast Guard, and buying a lot of materials and equipment and hiring a lot of people and making a lot of contracts with smaller companies. They were out there in these radio ads to tout the program and tout its positive economic benefits. They were doing whatever they could to try to make the program, give the program a higher profile, and also give the program better attention and to get the public buying into the program that they're paying for already, and also essentially to say some nice things about the program and the government that is behind the program. And they were even more aggressive in YouTube videos, including a video that they had of Harjit Sajjan, the defense minister, shaking hands in slow motion with C-SPAN workers in their hard hats at the C-SPAN yard in North Vancouver. So this is something that I looked at in a story on the Breaker.news after Justin Trudeau came to Vancouver and held that news conference and said that they're going to build even more ships out of C-SPAN and spend even more billions of dollars at C-SPAN, and also a few ships at the Irving shipyard in the East Coast. So a win-win for C-SPAN, especially, spending some of this money on advertising to promote the program that they were working on, and essentially as a secondary message to promote the government that was enabling this program. I asked C-SPAN for my story in the Breaker.news how much this was costing, why they were doing it, what their budget was, who did the ads for them. They wouldn't answer those questions. They tried to claim it was the company's money, but I don't really buy that, because the company wouldn't be advertising about a program to build for the government if the government wasn't already paying them to build for the government. The government, through Public Works Canada, did tell me that there is, within the contract, some money that's available for advertising, but it's mostly supposed to be for recruitment advertising, so they can get workers to work on the project. They haven't shown me a copy of the contract, and they were a bit cagey, but I believe that deep down in government, you've got to believe that C-SPAN and its lobbyists were probably telling the government everything that was happening and exactly what they were doing and what the desired outcome was. And they got a nice outcome when Justin Trudeau announced the building of more ships at their yard.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO, on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp. is a Canadian-based mineral exploration project generator. The company currently holds multiple property interests in Ontario with joint venture partners and is seeking further joint venture partners for other drill-ready properties in our portfolio. For more information, please visit our website at rmroyalty.com or call me at 604-922-2030.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Who is going to benefit from this deal made with Craig James, the clerk of the legislature? He won't have to pay back money for anything that he may have taken improperly?
Well, that's the way it seems right now. This non-monetary clause, which was announced May 16th when Beverly McLaughlin's report was tabled in the legislature, and she found Craig James had committed misconduct, including taking a $257,000 pension for himself 7 years ago. And right now, I mean, he's benefiting because he gets to get some sort of pension. He doesn't have to pay back the money, and he retired, although retired in disgrace. This is a case of a lot of mysteries because we haven't seen all the records, all the documents. The McLaughlin report, most of it is visible, but there are certain sections that are redacted. We haven't had a chance to see the transcripts of her interviews with the various people she interviewed, including Gary Lenz and Craig James, and she did not put them under oath for some reason. She wasn't explicitly given that task under the order that was passed by the legislature, but you'd have to think that a Supreme Court justice who retired after a long career of sitting in courts and hearing people testify under oath, swearing an oath before they testify, that they're telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth. In this case, they were more informal interviews, and she did not ask them to swear under oath. So she essentially took them at their honor. but we don't see the transcripts. They're covered by parliamentary privilege. Maybe we'll see them when the legislature is covered by the FOI law. I'll be asking for them when that happens. We can't see this deal that was made with Craig James. We just know about a few terms. There's a lot of mysteries, and Dulcie McCallum, the former ombudsperson for BC, who now lives and works in Nova Scotia, wrote to the Times Colonist with an op-ed saying, "Show it to us. Does this remind you of the Robert Mueller report, which was partially redacted?" We really do have a right to see everything there is to know about this, especially since this whole process was done really in secret, in private. It's confidential. It wasn't done as a hearing process to get to the bottom of the truth. Meantime, though, the RCMP investigation does proceed against Craig James and Gary Lenz, and hopefully we'll find out something sooner or later about that.
Bob, the Whitecaps we've talked about before, where there were allegations that some female members of their team were somehow abused, and a lot of people are worried that those complaints were not properly investigated. Now we're seeing thousands of people march out of their games, or probably even worse for them, thousands of people not even bothering to attend. Indeed.
There might be a chance for some of those thousands of people to come back, depending on how they greet the news of this week that Kira McCormick and Eden Hingling, two of the former players in the women's team, who were also whistleblowers, that they were granted an audience with two of the Whitecaps' four co-owners, Greg Kerfoot, who doesn't do much in the way of meeting people in the public, who never does interviews, and Jeff Mallett, the other minority shareholder. They both met with Kira McCormick and Eden Hingling and some of the other players from the women's team from more than a decade ago to hear firsthand about the allegations and how frustrated the players were with the Whitecaps' feeble response. It took about 3 months, and finally the Whitecaps on Monday said that they had met with these players and that they'd hired a sports law firm to do an investigation behind the scenes to get to the bottom of what happened in 2008 and to make some recommendations on how to go forward and handle a kind of situation like this if it ever happens again. So there was that positive movement several weeks after the Whitecaps put out that statement and very feebly handled it with the media by not calling all the media, by only doing interviews with hand-picked companies, especially ones tied with the Whitecaps and their sponsor Bell. So there has been some movement, but I think that this was really caused not so much by the damaging headlines of these players talking about abuse and harassment and bullying that happened when they were players on the women's team back in 2007, 2008. I think what really precipitated this movement this week was the Whitecaps realizing it was hurting them in the pocketbook, that there were 2 games in April that I received the official attendance from PAVCO via Freedom of Information, that they had suffered some severe drops, just over 13,000 for one game, and another game a little under 14,000. This is for a team that actually started the year off in best ever fashion. They had 3 matches to start off the year at more than 20,000 at the gate, but then they fell to these lows, and I'm waiting for the attendance figures for more recent games. But if you watch the games on TV or attended the games in person at BC Place, it's kind of a lonely atmosphere, not as loud as it normally is. The Southsiders were, for 3 matches, walking out at the 35th minute and watching the rest of the first half in the concourse and the big screen TV before returning for the second half. But they moved out in the last 10 minutes, and that was noticed inside the stadium and noticed on TV broadcasts. But the smatterings of empty seats turned into whole blocks of empty seats in various parts of the stadium, and it became very obvious what was happening, that the Whitecaps, who promote their events as being before the best sport atmosphere in Vancouver, suddenly didn't have the best sporting atmosphere in Vancouver. It felt rather empty and rather quiet during some moments of one match that I attended. So this is a team that's hoping to get back on track. I mean, this week they're celebrating the 40th anniversary of the 1979 Soccer Bowl victory from the North American Soccer League version of the Whitecaps. That was rescheduled. It was supposed to be August 31st. They brought it up to May 31st. So they're hoping to get back on track with that. This is a team that, I'm getting these numbers directly from BC Pavilion Corporation because the Whitecaps actually refused to release the numbers, like a lot of other teams in Major League Soccer. Back in 2016, I was able to convince the Office of the Information Privacy Commissioner made legal arguments in a written adjudication to try to get these numbers into the daylight. The Whitecaps hired a law firm, and that law firm advised them that no, they shouldn't release the numbers because sponsors and broadcasters would harm the relationship between the Whitecaps and sponsors and broadcasters. And the adjudicator didn't buy that, didn't see it doing any harm, and in fact said that broadcasters and sponsors and the Whitecaps should know full well that anyone can go to BC Place and take some photos and make their own little estimates of the attendance. It's not a secret to anyone when there are a lot of empty seats, or a secret to anyone when there are a lot of full seats, which doesn't happen very often at BC Place for Whitecaps. But in this case, the adjudicator did say that the Whitecaps have to make, and PAVCO have to make the statistics on attendance public. But unfortunately, the Whitecaps don't do that at their matches, and they don't do that on the official score sheets, which is rather unfortunate. They prefer to release only the amount of tickets that they say they sell or allot. The word attendance in the dictionary, find your local dictionary, it's pretty simple. It means, the number of people that are present at a certain venue or time. And for the Whitecaps, last year they averaged about 18,000 and change for attendance. This year they had 320,000 crowds start the season before they had the dip into the 13s.
Bob, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin, the publisher of TheBreaker.news, his website, thebreaker.ca. If you have any questions for Bob or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.